Welcome to Developing Through Change, our second episode, and today we've got a fantastic guest with us, Sue Jones from the Institute of Health and Social Care Management, and Dan's here, Mark's here. So Dan, I'm going to pass straight to you. What is the discussion today?
Great, lovely to see you, Sue, and you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm not worried about John.
Well, there's a couple of things. Big news in the care industry, the news coming through from the government, what the changes in visa rules, what that means for workforce. That could be a useful place to start. And then as we go in deeper, we've got to think all of the consequences that will mean for individuals trying to lead at this moment in time, increased levels of instability. They probably thought before this, things are uncertain, I don't know what's going on, and then they feel rocked again. So I think we should concentrate there. But when we talk about leadership, it's applicable to all forms of leaders, whether they're in domiciliary care, whether in residential care, or into healthcare, and then leaders more generally at this moment in time in the public sector. Does that feel all right with everyone?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, it sounds like a right plan. Okay, so who's going to start then?
Who knows much about what's the government's announced? I think we should delve into that.
Go on, you go on.
So I think it's really tricky, isn't it? So because the white paper's been come out all of a sudden, nobody really knows or understands what it means. I think that's true even at Department of Health and Social Care. I think everyone's now scrambling around trying to say, what do we know? And nobody knows anything. I think the remit that I'm reading though, and what the gist I'm getting is that for social care, international recruitment will be being stopped. Now that has a real massive knock-on effect, because what we do know is in recruitment and in social care, it's very, very difficult to get UK-based citizens who want to work in this industry for a whole load of reasons. And what we also do know is prior to the international colleagues coming over, for Devon alone, we had an unsourced met need of about 3,000 or 4,000 hours. And within a year of our international recruits and colleagues coming, that was down to several hundred. So what we can see really clearly is they've made a massive effort, and they've really made a big change to the landscape for social care. Now my concern is, as the causes disappear, will these people stay? Will they go? Will people renew them? And what does that mean for the void? Is that going to come back with unmet need? Now we're going to have lots of our families, friends, neighbours and colleagues who can't get care. It's a really sticky situation. And I don't know if the government have really thought it through. That's the debate, I think, isn't it? Do we think they thought it through, and what's it going to be about?
Yes, I agree with you. That's a good synopsis. I mean, whatever we look at, it just seems like the announcement feels disconnected from the complexity and from system stakeholders, and it's made an unsustainable situation in the care sector. And probably hasn't improved it in any way, and plays into that. It won't be the last time we use sort of military terms, but that's that VUCA, that volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous situation, which plays into increased levels of stress and anxiety, not only for those people running the businesses, but for care staff and those people in receipt of care. And what happens in complex systems, especially if you address it with something as simple as this, is that it will have unintended consequences. And as we know, the system itself, the care system, is part of the wider health and care ecosystem, which is part of a wider system itself. And the issue about that is that it will have knock-on effects on all kinds of things, including the hospitals and stays and people's well-being. So there's a bunch of risks associated with this. So I think that's the uncertainty around it. And the question mark is that, what is the plan? If there's no plan, well, we're left in that VUCA situation, aren't we?
And I think at the moment, care providers have got so much noise already in their minds, and this is just something else that they have had to think, they've now got to think about, which is okay, but how do you actually, because we don't even know, and that's the problem, it's the guidance isn't there, so it's what can you control versus what you can't control.
Well, the trouble is, we're still trying to work through what the NI change means to us. We're literally just sat here saying, what does that mean financially to companies like my own with Unicare Devon and other companies? It doesn't matter if it's social care or not, that has a knock-on effect. This NI change is too big a change too quickly. You know, no one's saying that we shouldn't have to pay taxes. No one's saying we shouldn't have to try and get the debt down. But such a big jump is moronic, really. It's crazy. And I think then to throw this on top of it, some people are going to really struggle mentally of how we manage this and their concerns. And we're already seeing micro providers collapse. We're already seeing people saying enough is enough. And it doesn't matter if it's a cafe or a care agency. People are going, can't do this. So the knock-on effect directly is business closing, families not having an income, potentially saying, I've now got anxiety issues, I can't work, so going back on the dole. How's this going to improve the situation? It's mind-boggling. Maybe they're so intelligent, these people, they have a bigger plan and God is on their side, because that's something, they're going to need it.
Well, I imagine there is a plan, but the plan probably exists at another level up, doesn't it? Which is thinking about the macroeconomic situation and the challenges that they're under, and then they use certain levers that they've got at their disposal, and then there's political pressures. So I think in one respect you can look at it and it could make political sense. However, for the people at the front line, the people directly affected, it just throws so much into chaos. I think the bit that has frustrated me is the lack of... It was the same when the announcements with the cuts to the ICBs got announced. There seems to be no empathy, or a feeling like if we just get it out there and we get it out there fast, that's kinder. But without the plan or the detail or the empathy, it does rock everybody straight off where their own stability into a position of, like you were saying earlier, kind of fight or flight. And once you get into that zone, it becomes difficult to think straight.
I think so. But I also think that are we being led by the UK? Or are we being led by a third party abroad? Europe, America, whoever it might be. I mean, there was a vote to move out of the EU. Right or wrong, everyone's got their opinion. However, that gave us an opportunity to make our own rules, make our own choices and move in our own direction. And it feels very much like we're not. It feels very much like we're being dragged along with the rest of the ecosystem doing what everyone does anyway. And for me, there's been no consultation, has there? Where's the consultation around any of this? It's just been, we're going to go in with a sledgehammer and smash it to pieces and hope it fixes okay. And it may do, who knows? I mean, Brits are resilient, but it doesn't mean it's not going to cause big problems in between, does it?
And I don't know what the plan is. I really don't know what the plan is, and it's almost, is there an opportunity really for care providers now to just say, look, we can't control that. There is nothing we can do about that landscape, but what can we do outside of that? What is our pathway that is not going to be affected by any political decisions? I don't know what that looks like, you know, I've got a plan, I've got an idea, but that requires a big shift change.
I think it does. I think ultimately what we do know is we have to not ask for permission sometimes. Do we have to say, what does it mean just to get on and do something? And try and curb into a really positive mindset, because you do have in your gift certain things you can control. What they are is up for debate, isn't it? Sorry, can you just push that lever that's down in the middle? Push it up to match everyone else's, because I'm not even sure if I'm recording, so hopefully we are.
Yes, I'll just turn that one down again.
Yeah, it should be okay. But I think there are things and levers as business owners as we can pull, isn't there? And what this may well do, it may well push smaller providers into a collaborative space that you have no choice but to work together as a team to make a larger organisation. I'm not necessarily saying merge, but actually reduce your overheads by saying, let's share A, B, C and D.
Yes, I think, forcing change sometimes in a system which is sort of stuck, either the crisis itself where things are catastrophic and leaves people no choice. But averse to that is an enlightened, connected leadership which understands how they could use their role to move that sort of paradigm and address that instead of sitting in that failed space. No one I don't think ever suggested that international recruitment came about because that it seemed to be the thing to do. We had to do it because of certain circumstances. What it did do is that, in my opinion, not address the fundamental issues which are underlying the system at the moment, which isn't sufficient. We have problems with recruitment, we have problems with retention, we have problems with respecting and actually seeing and actually valuing the care workforce. And we value a lot of people who bring our young people into life, but we don't seem to respect a lot of the people who deal with people towards the end of the life at their most vulnerable. We don't even have a sort of an economic value on it in those ways, because care is not like widgets. And so what we've got a situation which hasn't been addressed, and we've got a plaster over it. The problem is that we've, in a way, not either ourselves or through whatever, encouraged to actually think this is not forever. What do we do in this time now the last plaster has been ripped off and the wound certainly hasn't healed? And that's where we are now, is in a crisis situation.
I think so. I think we're definitely in a crisis, but it would have paid dividends to them, wouldn't it, to said, there is a plan, this is going to happen, and pushed all the local authorities and the ICBs to use their influence to start the collaborative conversations. You will need to come together to do this. You will need A, B, C and D in place to sustain a solid basis for your workforce. But I think the respect thing goes right through the system, and we've definitely got a 3-tier system. Now, I've got lots of friends in primary care, in the ICB, and they're all fantastic people, but they do sit in different silos of respect against social care. Sorry everyone, we've just had a mass influx of people upstairs, so it is what it is. So
I think they're dancing. Actually.
I think they are dancing. But I think we need to find a way to harmonise the respect and bring ourselves up to a level where we are a team. How do we make the ICBs, the local authorities, primary care and social care come together on a plateau where we can work in harmony to say, we are here to look after our vulnerable. And that is the primary core of our job roles. That's what we need to do. And we have a budget for that. What does that budget need to be spent on, and where is it directed to? And stop trying to just grab it all in one direction or another direction, because actually, through shared resources, through thinking more laterally about how we push care around the system and flow, we really have an opportunity to bring that cost down but provide better care. Yeah. That's my opinion.
And the problem, what I have been hearing over the last couple of days, is this constant referral to care work being low skilled. Yeah. And how on earth can we set up a landscape or a proper working relationship when the politicians are still referring to people as low skilled? Because for me, certainly what I absolutely think we should be focusing on is making a career in care aspirational, because if we don't do that, if we don't actually make a career out of care, because it's a fabulous career, if people come into care you can go into anything, but have they done any, and I know there's figures and I know there's demographics on what the need is going to be in the future, but have they done the demographics behind who are they actually going to want? Who is going to do that care work?
Can I just ask you a question though? Because it's really interesting, this skilled tag, isn't it? Because for me, I know some senior nurses and doctors and people who are very, very knowledgeable, very, very well educated, got the bedside manner of a dog. So I'm sort of sat here saying, what is skilled? What does it mean to all of us? When my dad was unwell, I tell you now, if somebody walked in there as a consultant and didn't talk to him the right way, he would got his flea in his ear. There's a skill around soft skills that people forgive and forget about. And some of the care workforce are very empathetic, they're very kind, very gentle, and they do a fantastic job. They know how to wash and look after somebody, they know how to feed, they know how to look after them. why does it need to be more than that necessary if they're doing a really good job? If that person feels looked after, they feel like they're being their family members there, even though they're not, and they have company, and they go to bed at night going, I feel looked after. Why is that not seen as a skill?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
I think for me that, I mean, the word is in care, and so we look at knowledge-based care, and knowledge-based skills, and we can sort of measure that and pay for that, and physical sort of skills, and we'll talk about the physical aspects of care, and we can recognise that, and we can sort of commission against that, but we find it very hard to actually commission against probably the most important aspect of it, and that's the heart-based care,
And
which
the
is about the
language,
relationship.
you know, the communications, the what people have to say in order to have that good relationship with somebody. You've got to be able to communicate on their level, and care workers do that in absolute massive amounts.
And they meet people when they are at their most vulnerable.
Yes.
They meet people on their bad days and have to deal with that. And so there's something, it might sound a bit trite, but there's something which we need to recognise as a society. There's something really heroic in this, because we're all going to get old and infirm, and we're all going to be very vulnerable. And these people walk with us across that landscape, which is frightening, with us. And we should acknowledge that and reward that and respect that just as much as a soldier or a surgeon or a fireman. And we should hold it up and esteem it. But for some reason, as a society, the nature of care seems to have been entrenched in a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
Which isn't helped by the current government calling them or referring to them as low skilled.
But you know what, I mean, for anybody who doesn't understand care, for domiciliary care, carers will be up in the morning at 6:15 in the morning, showered, shaved, freshened up, ready to go. They'll be at a house by 7 a.m. Through that day, they might see 10, 12 people, get them up, get them washed, get them dressed, get them fed, get them put to bed. All the time, under heavy legislation, all the time having to make sure they make the right notes, making the right decisions, all on their own. No one else is there, making sure the medication's right. If not, they end up in safeguarding meetings. And if they're a senior carer, they might have an on-call phone that's on all night, and that can ring at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, wake you up, and someone will say to you, I can't go to work at 7 a.m, you've got half an hour to cover those calls. That pressure is horrendous, because your primary goal is to make sure those people are seen. Now, I don't know about all the people that are listening to this, when they wake up in the morning and they're going to their daily job in their office or the shop. You don't have that anxiety of that phone sat there waiting for you to ring. I've been sat there before, and I've woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning going, please don't ring, because I know there's no cover, there's no staff.
Yeah.
And it's horrendous. Those anxieties caused by it and the pressure that we're under is massive. So to turn around and say there's no skill, I tell you, I would love to see the Prime Minister come in and go, take this on-call phone, and when it rings, fix that problem, please. Because I tell you now, it's a challenge.
We've all said at some point we don't fully understand it and why it's happening, but I think it's very deep. It's quite raw, the reason why this happens. You have to face into discrimination that exists and bias that exists in our society. Care shouldn't be, but it's viewed as a genderized profession. It's viewed predominantly as something done by females. Females in our society, for far too long, continually, are seen as not as equal as males. Too much of policy, too much of direction is dominated by males. As a result, the dignity level or the level of pay, the commissioning value, all of these things, they all mount up. So it's so deeply entrenched that it's very hard to overcome. But as you've been talking, I've just been trying to think, is there other professions, and I think you mentioned one earlier about nursing, and possibly there's others, where through a variety of means of intervention over time, things have changed. So in nursing, I imagine there was a degree of advocacy, people finding ways to make their voice heard about this is not right, we need to respect this workforce more, at the same time as professionalisation. If we aren't going to win on the soft skills argument, let's find a way that the skills argument wins in the traditional sense, so that people realise this is accredited or has a higher level of accreditation. So the journey through it is very long, and it's going to be quite complex, and it's going to involve campaigning, but it's also got to be multi-tiered. And I think this is where this podcast has a particular angle on it, because you can say, yes, it's societal, well, that's bigger than us, but society is made up of a series of organisations in systems, in teams, made up by individuals, and how we all decide to respond, and then how we collectively talk about it, and how we come together or we walk in a similar direction can have a very large effect. The challenge, as everyone's just said, is if you feel demoralised and you feel on the back foot, you feel stressed and you feel your livelihood's at risk, suddenly your ability to think all those things through in a coherent way is really impeded. So I want to see, part of our job is to help individuals who might be listening to this realise their own agency, their own power, and give them some tools or some advice maybe to help them to get through this period and start to have an impact that they can have.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just did a post earlier, which is around 4 weeks. I'm really into this 4-week thing at the moment, because I think it's not too far away that you can't do something with it. So I'm in this frame of mind where I'm sort of saying, well, if we need to change something, let's look at it over a 4-week period, because it's tangible, it's manageable. We can sort of get into that and have a really honest conversation about what the problem is now, what you perceive that to be, and let the people in the room talk to you about that. It's actually, is that really the problem? And then get a bit of direction and work towards that, incremental steps, and check in every day if you need to, and say, are we still on track? So from the government point of view, we are having this done to us. Surely it would have made sense to have a consultation and said, we need to get here, these are the input bits we have to move into to do it. It's going to be uncomfortable, guys, but we're a team, let's do it. And actually come out the other end with a glowing social care that felt like it had been empowered. We're not going to do that. So like you say, Dan, now it's about the individual companies saying, what can we do? Or as collaborations, what can we do? And I'm hoping that what we're going to see around the country is lots of providers saying, how do we group together? Could we have something like, I don't know, shared scheduling hubs? So rather than having 5 people doing schedules, have 2 that run it for several companies. But with that comes the added benefit, doesn't it? Because a brokerage team then can call into one place and you can help share staff. So if I can only do the mornings, Dan, you could do the afternoons. Now I've got a shared package, we can answer that straight away and we can do that. There's lots of things we can do if you're thinking of it in an innovative way, but that means you have to have trust. It means you need to have support from the local authorities. It means you need to come together regularly. It needs to drop your guard.
Yeah.
All of those things are really hard to do.
Yeah, I think for me, we picked up earlier about this, the 2 states here, and one is this survival state, and I suppose as a former survival instructor, I'm always going to go to the kind of sort of these acronyms about the environment.
You sort of look like that with your hair like that.
Yeah, possibly I do, yes. But the thing for me that there's 2 things which need to take place. One is to is go through a method which you can survive. So if you are faced with what you feel is an existential crisis, then you need to be able to find the handholds to, protect your position, protect yourself. What you need to keep those immediate threats away. What you need to do is understand where you are actually, because to develop a strategy from A to B, you need to know where you are. So have a really good look at the kind of that landscape, the wider landscape around you, and where you're situated in it. And I think for me then is what are the kinds of resources you need around you, which you can get in order for you to undertake that journey to a safer place. And for me, wrapping around all of that, so you got your resources, you know the safe place where you want to get, and that's your kind of navigation to that. But also make sure that your needs in terms of your wellness and your well-being are looked after throughout all of that. So there is a method in a way, and that's called Plan M in survival terms. But for me, the Army is full of acronyms and things like that. But for me, there is this transition. We are a lot of people feel in a very hostile, uncertain VUCA environment. How do we sort of stabilise that and find a methodology under stress to be able to get yourself feeling that this isn't the end of the road? And for me, once you can do that, then the idea of what you said is about, you know, collaboration and partnerships and networking and building trust and relationship. You can think about those things as well, because you know, we're not alone in all of this. There's a lot of people you know, facing these same things. Reach out, share, network, build relationships with those people, and through that trust, maybe you'll find space for new ideas and new things to be able to change, because we are the agents of change here. I don't think, as demonstrated, we can leave it up to others to decide our fate for us.
No, I don't think so. I think so. In the room, we've got some really interesting characters. I mean, Sue, from your point of view, the Institute of Health, Social Care Management, you do some incredible leadership management as well, don't you? Training, and Dan, you do quite a lot of personal stuff, don't you? Personal development and people on a journey. So, from those two aspects, what we put in place. So, if I came to you today and I said, right, do you know what? I've got this going on, I'm not quite sure how to navigate it. My staff team are doing this, I've got NI bills coming at my ears, I feel stressed to my hill, I can't sleep at night. If you were a team together, what would we be saying here, do you think?
So from my point of view, obviously from the Institute's point of view, we have a Future Proof Your Care business programme, so we can actually look at a business as a whole and really think about, well, what does the business need? But I'm just thinking of more, I know, because I hear it, how much best practice there is across the UK in ICBs, in NHS trusts, in care providers. There is so much fabulous work going on out there. So wouldn't it be absolutely amazing if we could collate all of that information so we know that in Derby we have care providers who are doing this. Why don't you replicate that? All the other, you do fabulous work in Devon, John, and I know that you could bring people together and bring the resources together. I know you're doing it already, but how could we replicate that across the UK is what I would be doing. I would want to do.
Yeah. So Dan, from your point of view, I mean, because you're very much about the individual first and then going out. I mean, if I'm not right with that, please tell me. But, you know, it's a lot about well-being, about knowing yourself and stuff like that. Do you want to just run through?
Sure. Yeah, well, and I'll connect the two maybe a bit later, because I think what we do as individuals has to then be amplified up. But when I start working with people, it's like Mark's saying, you have to understand where somebody is right now, and what is, you know, if the building's on fire, you get out, you don't have a nice discussion about their mindset, because we just need to be safe. And it's the same when you're under threat. So try and engage the person with what's really important, so that you can release a little bit of the pressure and the anxiety to get to the richer, deeper, important stuff that if you don't get there, you won't make the change. So problem definition and situational analysis. Then the piece that I place a lot of emphasis on, I think it's not massively different from other people, but it's really important to me, is before going into the tactical, connect with the person about what is their kind of non-negotiable standards for living their life. Given their experience of being who they are and how they've moved through their life to date, what, if they stick by it, makes them feel proud, anchors them, or gives them a compass to interpret the world through. So we think about purpose, what really drives them. I've said this before, but you know, you ask some challenging questions, like imagine you're witnessing your own funeral and hearing the eulogy being said about you. What do you want to hear? Well, let's really connect that purpose back into how we now approach the situation in front of us. So you go through that sort of depth, but then you, throughout the early conversations, what I notice is the role of mindset. Where is their mind in terms of which paradigm are they viewing the world through, and how might that be restricting or helping them? And if they view the world very much through a being done to, a deficit mindset, people are against me, I'm in competition, how to help them realize that that's going to take a lot of energy, it's going to use up a lot of resources, and ultimately it's not going to release the best within them. Their creativity is going to be restricted. And support them with mindset tools, relaxation, exercise, self-care to get into that next area. From there, it all becomes personalised now. You understand them well enough, you can create a plan, and they create their own plan a lot of the time. The connection that I mentioned at the beginning, though, is in systems thinking, there's models, and I like the chasm analogy. Firstly, understand strength. If you're trying to change something, build from the foundation that you already have. Where are your assets, asset-based approaches? But be really honest about the barriers that are in front of you. Get to know them so well. But before you develop a plan, envisage the future that you really want to get to. And make that an emotional future, one that you care about, one that is aspirational and stretching. Now you've got that over there, you understand your strengths and you know the barriers in front of you. Now we get into plan making, because we can be highly tactical and we can be really responsive to the environment while sticking with our strengths and where we want to get to. All sounds quite easy to say, it's harder to do, but the benefit is when our organisations are beside people, then they feel kind of scaffolded and supported to do it. And it's very similar. I think the Plan M, I hadn't heard that term, but everything you've just said about that methodology of survival, I realised that's probably the foundation of a lot of this theory.
I think it's really interesting, guys, isn't it? Because what's really clear is everyone in this room are just from this sector. That just shows in one conversation we have the tools to move this into an opportunity to do something really good, don't we?
Yeah, I think picking up on Sue, what you said, what Dan said, is that things we might have the tools, but are they actually available to us? And I don't mean available to us, they're there, but it's psychologically available to us. And I think for me is that we probably know what needs to be done. We certainly in this industry know why we're doing it. But sometimes we'd really struggle with how. And actually the help is that, a good example of good work happening in some other parts of the country, but actually in my moment of stress now, have someone come and sit with me and show me how. And I think that's why we need to connect with each other. And one of the things about relationship and being connected and being networking is the ability to show people how and receive that. You can give and receive in that environment.
But I think it's more than that, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter how outgoing my mindset might be, there's barriers around you. So I think there's something around going to those who feel they're in some sort of control. If they are or not, I debate that. But we've got the local authorities, the ICB saying, we need a proper plan, not just a 5-year plan NHS that doesn't involve social care. Let's agree on what we want to get to. And that may well be that we want to use ABC learning to have a carer's passport to upskill them so we can move them around the sector. It may be that we're going to have collaborative pods. It may be that we're going to put everyone back in their boxes and you will fight out to the lowest price. Who knows? But I think if we had a proper strategic plan that was designed to improve things properly, we could get behind it. Because at the moment, nobody really has a plan.
Well, and that's why you can't rely on someone else coming up with the plan. I mean, ultimately, I think if you're in this this more survival situation, you need to come up with your own plan, and you need to sort of execute upon that. I think that once you've secured your position, then I think it's moving to a space where you can build relationships with others. So when plans are developed, it's not a case of strong lobbying, but actually it's in a kind of a way of, through those relationships and that mutual respect, forming it together. So rather than being done on two or expect someone else to do it.
So there's something really powerful about that comment there, isn't there? So I've gone in and said, look, it's really helpful, we can do this. And you've said what you've said. I think so by default, I mean, there's something really powerful then, isn't there, about people following how you shine. If you're shining bright enough, people will follow what you're doing. They'll see that you're influencer, they'll see that you're doing very well for yourself. And there are ways to do that. If you sit down with the methodology of what Dan said and the training that sort of Sue's company puts out, there are ways to move forward, isn't there?
Yeah. Just
And sorry, I was just going to add that, because it's really important to, I suppose, meet people where they're at. People come at this at different timescales and different ways. But I know you've created the app, the 360 app. Now, if I was a care provider and I wanted to know something, it would be great to have something. Because I know that people are reinventing the wheel all over the UK, and they don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's shortcuts to stuff because it's already been done. Wouldn't it be great to have somebody, look, I'm thinking about doing this. How do we get that message out there so people can say, yes, I can do that? How do we get that sort of mentoring and buddy systems across so people can actually, if somebody's asking for help, there are people out there that know how.
And with software like Info 360, which is an app designed for collaboration, you could quite easily buddy up. You could put Unicare with a company in Scotland, and you could say, right, buddy up. And you could do that easily and seamlessly. So it's around that sort of thinking, isn't it? How do you move information up and down the country really quickly, really quick, and really swiftly, but also have that trust where I can say, do you know what? I'm really trying hard. I've hit a brick wall. I don't think I can do this today. I need to check in. And you go, what's going on then? Is it that bad? And it's a bit like those recurring thoughts you have in a night, isn't it? Where you sit there all night with anxiety, go, in the morning, I must have this done, must have this done, must have this done. In the morning, go, what the hell was all that about?
You have that as well.
And I have that as well.
What did I think?
Yeah.
What was I thinking?
But you've had, you've fallen asleep at 5 o'clock in the morning, you've woken up at 6, and it wasn't important at all. But in the night, it felt so important. But I think there are the moments where you need to have a buddy where you can go, I just need you to ground me. Is this really a problem, or is it just I need to be put back in the corner because it's nothing really, and just carry on with my momentum? Because sometimes we've been overwhelmed in the day and age that we're in, haven't we?
I think networks, there's been a term going around for a long time, sort of the future is networks, or the future is networked. And if we tried to answer our first question about, what's the government up to and how we're going to change it, it just feels insurmountable. And you're trying to get somebody else to do what you want them to do, which is quite a difficult task anyway. Whereas when you move into where this conversation has gone, there are great pockets, there are great individuals, people have got capabilities and resilience. How do we connect them together? How do you find allies? Then you get more energy from that, you get more momentum. From that momentum can come attention. That attention can come from people who are realising that their current policy isn't working and they need to work with bright spots, great examples, and then adjust. So I think our task as individuals is to remain sort of purpose-driven, morally based, and to experiment, and then to network. And organisations such as your own are great for that.
There's a coffin opening upstairs.
Whoa.
I just want to add to this about the... and once again, resorting to sort of survival analogies, but actually, when you're in this kind of situation, you only have so much energy. It's not necessarily always readily available. You want to conserve it. You want to be able to do that. So it's not cheating to find where other sources of energy are, which are easily and readily available. And I think that you follow the energy. If there are people out there who've done it already, who've learned and can show you how, then use it. Conserve your energy, because if you're in a survival situation, you need to be able to conserve that in order to actually exist long enough to come to get to safety. So I think that's really important. But picking up on your thing about networks, the thing is, name dropping someone called Cormac Russell, who talks very eloquently about asset-based community development, is that the networks themselves are one thing, but it's the people who connect the networks together, the connectors, and so often, what we don't do as a wider system is actually recognise and value those people who are often not official connectors in an organisation or otherwise. And we need to look after them and nourish them, because they're the people who we go to who might not know the answer, but they will know someone who does. And I think that we need to recognise that and protect that role.
I think so, but I think it doesn't matter if they know the answer. Sometimes those people are just very good at listening and bringing stuff out of you. Sometimes, Mark, you've been that for me. I've not had a clue of how to land an idea, and I've gone, Mark, and we've just talked about it. In the end, I've answered my own question because you've brought me round to it. Sometimes you just need those people in your life, kind of, who they are willing to sit and listen and indulge you for a minute and go, actually, what do I know about this person? What are they thinking? And move with them in that direction. It's really interesting. We could go all day about this, couldn't we? I think we could.
Just got one more maybe thread to explore in this, which is when you talk about it as individuals, you can kind of find a way through it. You can go, okay, yeah, I could do that. But when you are responsible for leading others, it becomes particularly challenging because you begin to perceive that I need to act in a certain way in order to keep them feeling happy. You almost act parentally, sometimes as a leader in an organisation. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it can happen. And so there's part of you that is genuinely who you are, and then there is you as the leader or the manager, and that's something different. Sometimes people say, oh, it's like going on stage. You have to put on your different makeup or just act. And that becomes now super tiring. At this moment in time, you've got people who are possibly concerned about their own livelihood. Then they're concerned about paying the wages of people who that they lead and their livelihood, their family, their mortgages, their houses. It's just immensely stressful. So, I mean, there's no obvious answer through it apart from just to remember that all of the people that you think you need to care for are adults themselves in these circumstances. And don't try and hold everything and restrict everything from them because actually sometimes they need to hear the information so they can make their own plan.
I also think there's something very powerful about sitting down, if you really are struggling, and saying, I value all of you, we all value each other, we all like working together. How do we go through this journey? I mean, if you're in that sort of pickle, you'll be surprised at how many people stand and go, okay, well, let's do it together.
Yeah.
Because they like working in the way they work. Not everyone wants to go and move to work in a shop or work for the NHS. Sometimes you just want to work for you and work as a team. So something fundamental at saying, actually, how do we move in this direction? And you can be very honest about the situation. If you're in that situation where it could fold anyway, what have you got to lose?
Mm. And I know I've spoken to a middle manager the other day working within the NHS, and you know she knows that she's having to identify staff while she also knows her boss is having to identify staff, and that's a really tough place to be at the moment. And all I would say is that you've got to really focus on what's right for you. You know, you've got to think about and understand what your priorities are, because sometimes people have to go through and have to continue in that space because they've got bills to pay, and that's absolutely. I think you touched it on the previous podcast, but it's really important to do what's right for you. And if the decision is I've got to stay, even though it feels uncomfortable, okay, what are you going to do that will actually counterbalance that, because that's draining. So what can you do?
Yeah, I think so. My last bit really is about understanding that the people around you aren't always being mean to you. Understanding they, like you said, they have their pressures. It's really important not to take that to heart, because that is crippling as well. If you feel like constantly that you're being isolated, you're being got at, or no one's working with you, or nobody wants to help you, it probably isn't about you. It probably is just that they're like this and their hands are tied and they physically can't. So don't take it as a no, just take it, okay, it's a right hand turn, please. I'm going to go around here and I'm going around here and I'm going to find another way in. There always is another way, but just try not to take it as a personal hit on you, because taking lots of things personally is draining. Every day becomes a chore. Just flick it off. Don't sweat the small stuff, isn't it?
So that's self-care. I mean, you can't look after others unless you look after yourself. As a leader, then obviously you want to create a degree of psychological safety within your organisation in order to do that. But it is that wellness which you need to do and undertake activities to ensure that you are.
And I will just plug a book there that I audio read it through Spotify, I think, and it was called The Dose Effect. Anybody read that?
We're all going to be downloading it later.
Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. And it's okay, if you are in that state of flux and in that angst state, what things can you do in your day-to-day life that will actually help with your happy hormones, your happy chemicals in your brain? And it's a really good book.
We'll have to get that. So Dan, everyone on here always comes along with his pen and his pad, as does Mark, but he's scribbling away. So Dan, I think let's let you mop this up and do the final little statement before we end the podcast. Reflections, thoughts, things to send people away with.
I think we're in a time right now where we're reflecting that the government is doing things to us and we disagree. The trick here is not to then pass that down the line, because we know that when there isn't a plan and we pretend that there is one, or when it's done to people, it creates reaction. It creates reaction ourselves. We've got to take that as wisdom and then think, but given my values, how do I want to act? Because if we imagine stuff coming down to us, and then how we respond goes back up. So we have an ability to affect the environment and what comes next by our own reactions and actions. So on the basis of today, I'd say, remember to talk to people, remember to form networks, remember to be values-based, to try and understand your purpose. But at the heart of it is kind of what Mark's been reminding us throughout, is you've got to be around in order to play this game. And to be around, you've got to look after yourself. So self-care, again, is probably the end word.
Lovely, thank you. So on that note, we're going to call it a day. Thank you, everybody. Sue, thank you for coming. Third button up, second row in, over across, press the button, go. Thanks all, thank you.
There you go, Mark, you got a new job.